RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Iron Debate, our first Olympia preview episode of Iron Debate. So glad you can join us wherever you are. We are excited to bring you on the Iron Road to the Olympia. We thank our friends at MuscleTech for sponsoring RX Muscle's coverage of the 2023 Olympia. We are going to be previewing all different aspects, all different angles of the Olympia. But without further ado, let's introduce our panel. Of course, we are joined by Armon Adibi. You see him on After Hours, and we're so glad to have him on here. Armon, what is up?
What's up?
And then, of course, for this kind of a show, for this kind of a format, and it is Olympia times, the biggest time of the year, we had to bring this man back on the show. Of course, we are talking about the one, the only King Kamali. King, what is up?
What's up,
Let's
brother?
go. Let's go. All right. And of course, the man with the final word on all topics, sitting in our Fort Myers, Cape Coral studio, Dave Palumbo. Dave, ready to go?
We're ready. Ready to rumble, as they say.
Let's go. Let's go right into the topics. The first topic, Hadi Choopan, current Mr. Olympia. And if you think about the odyssey that has been over the course of the last, let's say, 6 years, right? There was the year, I think 2 maybe, that he was qualified. No, first, I'm sorry, 1 year. He was qualified for the Olympia, was not able to get here because of visa constraints, obviously making his Olympia debut in 2019 by virtue of winning the Vancouver Pro. And since then, finishing top 3, a show in which many people, including on our wrap-up, Milos Sarcev making the strong point that he should have won that show. The next year, getting to Orlando, Florida, maybe 72 hours before the Olympia, and obviously coming in a little off and prejudging, but sneaking his way back into the top 5 in the night show on Saturday night. And then, of course, last year, winning the Olympia. So, gentlemen, the question is this, the broader question: can Hadi Choopan repeat as Mr. Olympia? When you consider, obviously, what you saw on stage, but then when you look at the offstage aspect of it as well, there are many people that wondered, should Mr. Olympia, should the title have been given to a man who's from Iran, does not speak much English, but when you consider what he brought on stage, Hadi Choopan, Mr. Olympia, does he repeat again this year? King Kamali, let's go to you first.
He has a good chance. Definitely a good chance of repeating again. He's got all the tools to come back and do it again. But the competition this year is just like every other year when there's a champion. People start to figure out the champion's formula and they start to catch up. There's an athlete, there's a bodybuilder that comes once in a while and he changes the scope of the sport. Dorian came along and everybody said, oh shit, we got to match this guy in mass. It became a mass game. Hadi came along and said, everyone's got to go and match this guy's conditioning. Hadi's blowing everybody away. And now that Dexter's gone, the last of the Mohicans, the last of the crispy guys from the 90s, he's gone. Hadi's the new standard. And he's bringing that type of conditioning with the muscle that he has on his small frame. But everybody realizes that now. And everybody knows that to beat Hadi Choopan, you don't just need the symmetry to match. You need to match his conditioning. And I think it's going to be very, very tough for him this year. He has the chance, but it's a lot tougher.
Armon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hadi Choopan's prospects to repeat in his first title defense.
I was a little shocked last year just because the whole, not speaking English thing. And I'm not sure why he doesn't learn a little bit of English so he can say, a few things. I know he's partially deaf or whatever, but you look at Derek right now, it's just insane looking. And if you ask me who I'd love to look like, I'd be like Derek, the small waist, everything just looks so blown up and, nice and full. And is Hadi, how's his shoulders going to look? Are they going to count off, this year for him? But I know people get tired of talking about his shoulders and all that, but it's still a factor. And when Derek has that clean, kind of fresh look, but Hadi has that different, dense, kind of older muscle too. So I think he could go either way. And I think it's like, that's a hard job for Hadi kind of prepping, 1 and 2, which I believe it'll be 1 and 2. But I don't know. It's a tough one this year.
Yeah, King, I want to go back to you because this is something that I feel like you'd be able to answer from a unique perspective. Obviously, you being Iranian, you are very connected to the Iranian bodybuilding scene. And, you told us years ago that there's this entire wave of bodybuilders coming out from Iran that the world is going to be very aware of very soon. And obviously, Hadi Choopan leading the way in that. But, again, when you hear the quote unquote, I guess, criticism, in the sense that we always hear this term as far as being an ambassador of the bodybuilding world when you're Mr. Olympia, and we heard that about Big Ramy, and we've heard a lot of that about Hadi Choopan. How much do you think all of that factors in into the judge's decision, into the overall crowning of a Mr. Olympia? That again, this is someone who is not going to be making the world circuit, speaking in English, shaking hands, kissing babies, and again, he is who he is. He's a great bodybuilder, but there are certain of those aspects that may be lacking.
I think before social media, you had a great point. Yes, that all factored into it. With social media, you just can't do that anymore. There's too many eyes. There's too many people. There's too many podcasts. There's too many opinions. People will rip other people apart, and it's just not going to work that way, the way it used to work. The politics aspect is still there, but you can't run that stuff like you used to before. Listen, Hadi is Mr. Olympia. Did he deserve it? Yes, he did. By this much, he did deserve the win. But not being an ambassador to the sport, not being the Jay Cutler to go around the world and, all that stuff, yeah, it has a little bit to do with it. But still, the best body has to win, okay? And Hadi, I don't think he cares, to be honest with you. He's in Iran. He is a god. He is Dan Marino in Florida of Iran, okay? That's what he is. He's he's the Elway of Denver. He doesn't care. He's got money now. He's got stout. He's got clout. He's Mr. Olympia, all that stuff. I don't think he cares. And you cannot, and Dave, you guys will attest to this, you can't argue with these Iranian fans. You can't. They'll come at you with fucking knives, guns, bombs, whatever it takes to prove that their champion is number one. That's why Armon just brought up a point about the shoulders. I'm not even going to go there because I already got 10,000 death texts and death, all the shit that I got for last year for bringing that up. And if anybody ever brings it up, then Hani's going to jump on the bandwagon. He's going to be like, oh, you're putting a spotlight on something that everybody has. Everybody has lumps on their body. Okay, put all that shit aside. Yes, the politics has a little to do with it, but I still think at the end of the day, as long as there's people like Weinberger on the panel, best body will win.
Dave, let's go to you. Let's go back to last Olympia. Obviously, when you think about Hadi Choopan and what we've seen on the Olympia stage, we are talking about a next level of conditioning that, now, again, as King mentioned, again, the game has changed now. There are previous champions where, all right, they made it a size game. Obviously, with Hadi, we are talking a conditioning game. In your opinion, what won it for Hadi Choopan over Derek Lunsford last year?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Look, King said it best. First, I want to give King credit because King mentioned the name. He actually didn't say just Iranian body. He said Hadi Choopan years ago. I don't remember what year it was, but he did mention that name. I remember hear it coming out of his mouth. I didn't know who the guy was, but so we got to give Kamali his props on that one. Call him that one.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. When you're right, you're right. And Hadi Choopan won last year, as King said, because he was the best body on stage. The judges vote for, what they have in front of them. And unfortunately, as also King pointed out, we haven't seen the ultra conditioning look since Dexter kind of left the stage. Mm-hmm. Even Phil Heath used to have the ultra conditioned look. Once those two are gone, we haven't really seen that anymore. But we like that, and judges like that. And judges like abs. They like glutes and hamstrings, conditioning. You know why they do? I'll tell you why. Because it's something that definitively can set people apart. Wow, did you see that guy's? I mean, Hadi's got some serious set of abs on him there. And he's got glutes and hamstrings that are ridiculous. And that can differentiate him from a Derek Lunsford, from a Samson Dowda, from a Brendan Curry. And you can say, this guy is a level ahead of everyone else. Now, because of the fact that he is not the guy who goes around and kisses babies around the world, and he's not really that, visible at other bodybuilding shows throughout the year, he makes himself into the Olympia title holder who people could take or leave. In other words, people wanted to see Cutler win, okay? That's not to say that they're going to take the title away from Hadi because he's not doing those things. It just means that if someone else comes in there that looks a little better, or that they can justify putting in there that's a little better, a la Derek Lunsford this year, a la Andrew Jacked, a la Samson Dowda, Hadi will lose. So he doesn't have a strong grip on the title, okay, because of the fact that he is not the marketing guy that they would love to have in that title. Now, also having said that, because the magazines are not as relevant, well, there's no relevancy. There's no magazines anymore. And because supplement companies are not financing these magazines that are no longer around, there's really no clout behind these guys. Like, no one's going to pick Hadi Choopan because he works for Evogen, and no one's going to pick Derek Lunsford because he works for Evogen. There's no I guess you could say ulterior motives anymore like there were in the past. So I think that the best man will win. And and because of the fact that Hadi doesn't have anything really checked off in his corner as giving him an advantage over other people, the guy who's all over the place, the guy who people love, I think he can lose if someone else comes in close. And Derek was nipping at his heels last year. It was a very close margin of victory. I think Derek, from what I could see picture-wise, looks absolutely incredible this year. I just did a video rant on the fact that this guy has brought up the one body part they told him to bring up, which was his back, so incredibly that I don't even know. I mean, it's like your teacher saying, if you're good in school, we're going to give you a better grade. He did exactly what the teacher said. And the fact that Samson Dowda and Andrew Jackson really come into their own. Labrada has raised his game a level. This is going to be a very competitive Olympia, and I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Matter of fact, if I was one of these guys that sets the betting, bets in like Vegas, I would not have Hadi Choopan as the clear favorite here. No way. I would not give him the advantage one bit.
Well, I think one thing is pretty clear from a lot of the conversation throughout the course of this year. Gone is the era where you're going to have the multiple time champion. I think you have too many good guys at the top of bodybuilding right now. But Armon, let me go to you on this one, because I think when you consider Mr. Olympia coming in, they are the quote unquote standard at the top of the lineup, and then you want to see how the rest of the lineup stacks up against them. But when you consider the big dogs, right? An Andrew Jack, a Nick Walker, Derek Lunsford, obviously, Hunter Labrada. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple, but the point is, everybody seems to have their own unique traits. There is no uniformity in terms of the physiques. So how does that factor in when you're considering a show of this quality, this caliber of lineup, going up against a Hadi Choopan in terms of the standard he sets and what the judges are going to be looking at as they compare him?
Well, first of all, I think Derek, just him winning the Olympia, he's such just a good, nice guy. He's going to be all over the place doing what you're supposed to do as an Olympian, like Jay Cutler was, and making the appearances. So I think they're going to realize that. Just that's separate. And everybody does have their own look. I think, I saw Andrew Jackson in Texas, and I was sitting in the third row right next to Dexter Jackson. We were talking the whole time. And it was really close it was hard to tell on video, but it was really close between, him and Hunter. Hunter had cross striations in his triceps, legs. He looked really good. But as soon as they started posing him, he faded right away. And then it was clearly Andrew's show. I don't know if Andrew could make that much improvement between, that show and the Olympia to kind of fill in. He kind of looked, I don't want to say stringy, but, compared to the, like the other guys, how much size can he add? So I don't know if I see him in the top 5, really 4 or 5. I'm not really sure. I'm a big Hadi fan. I'm a big Derek fan. Samson, I love Samson's physique. I just, is he going to come in hard? I don't know. King might know Milos's stuff a little more, but it's like I saw Regan coming in, and he's eating bananas and pineapples like a week out from the show every day. I really didn't understand that as me like prepping people for 20 years too. I just didn't understand it. What was behind it? Maybe King, since working with Chad and doing all kinds of stuff with the sugars, you might understand it more. I didn't understand that. And
I can answer that question, my friend. It's called Humalog.
Well, but
your answer
eating
right
fruit
there.
though.
Yeah, you could eat rice though too. I mean, and take Humalog. You know,
why the fruit?
Yeah,
though, King.
Because that is the staple of the old school Chad Nichols, Milo Sarchev, Amin Alai. You put them all together. That's what we did, and that's what we do. The dried pineapple, the apple pie filling, the bananas, the dates. That stuff is that old school stuff that we.
You know why they do that? You know why they do that, King? Because simple sugars get into your bloodstream so fast that they can slam huge amounts of insulin, and they're not going to crash because the blood sugar is raising itself so quickly that the Humalog grabs it and pushes it into the cells. Problem is, you know, you're hoping it's all going into muscle cells, you know, and a lot of times you can screw it up. You know, you look good the first 24 hours, and then by hour 36, things start going bad, and then they have to go to the gym and try to train some of the glycogen off, and they're taking diuretics, and so it gets complicated when you start, you know, putting all those variables in. And I think that's about. But you know what, King, I want to just follow up on something you said earlier. You said something about conditioning. You said Hadi Choopan won that show on conditioning, and I think, and I like that. That to me, that makes me feel very good because it makes these other guys stop with the fullness thing and saying, you know what, if I don't come in shredded, I'm not beating Hadi Choopan on that stage. And I think a lot of people are going to pay a lot more attention to coming in sliced and diced, and they're not like they did in the 90s, and they're not going to worry as much about how full I am on stage because they know fullness doesn't win against Hadi Choopan. Razor sharpness wins against Hadi Choopan.
Correct. And this is something to educate the world about when it comes to Iranians. The diet for them is easy. They're used to suffering. Okay, to them, this is not that difficult. When the carb depletion, I mean, they're used to goat. A lot of them are. I mean, no offense for Hadi, but even his last name means goat herder. Okay, so
really? Wow.
it kind of translates into goat herder. So you got to understand these guys in Iranian. That's why when I went there and I did my seminars and I came back and I said, Dave, you don't know what I saw, bro. There's a whole bunch of these mutants walking around. Well, Hadi, there's guys that have beaten Hadi for many years that were beating Hadi that are still there that nobody knows about.
Wow.
So to them, it's like, okay, I got to eat this. And then you come to America and you're staying at Hani's place and he's feeding you kebabs and filet mignon. And, you're like, fuck it, man. This is heaven on earth, So, yes. He beat them on conditioning, and people woke up. When we were competing against Dexter, we were like, fuck, Dexter's in the show. We got to come in fucking shredded. We got to come in dry and crispy. I place a phone call to Chad, I got to come in extra crispy, get the Bumex ready. All right? So that's the way we used to do it. So this is the way they have to start thinking. And I think this year they've learned their lesson, and they're going to come in crispy.
Dave, let's finish off this topic as far as, again, for years we talked about Phil, we talked about Ramy, and influencing the lineup to play more of the size game. Obviously, the tables have turned now with Hadi at the top.
Yeah, I mean, that 100% right. I mean, Hadi has basically created a new standard, and the judges have confirmed that standard, which is conditioning win shows. And we knew that was always the case. Ramy, they held Ramy to a very high standard. He did not win the Olympia for many years until he finally figured out a way to get close to his best. I don't think we ever saw the best Ramy out there, but he was close to his best enough with the size he had and the symmetry to win the Olympia. But, I mean, Phil Heath won 7 times basically because he was the most conditioned guy on stage. When Dexter won in, the one time in 2008, it was because he was the most conditioned. Cutler always came in shredded too on stage. And we know Dorian's, history and Ronnie's history. So every Mr. Olympia has always been in impeccable conditioning, aside from a few flub ups a few years in between, maybe with the multi-time winners. And, that's good. That's good because I don't want to see Samson Dowda win the Olympia at the way he looked at the Arnold. He looked great at the Arnold, but he wasn't his best. He wasn't dry, shredded. I want to see a Mr. Olympia that's held up as the standard, be not only great structurally, not only great muscle development wise, but I want to see him also be shredded to the bone. And that's gonna be hard to beat Hadi on. And I think Derek has the ability to do it. I don't know if Brandon has the ability to do it at this point in his career, because I think when he gets hard enough, sometimes his legs get too small. I think that Samson has not proved that he can do it, but he's gotten close, and I think hopefully he'll go all the way. Andrew Jack gets shredded. Will he have enough size when he's shredded? Like you pointed out, Armon, will he be full enough? I think he's the most dangerous guy to Hadi Choopan right now, in my estimation. Hunter Labrada can do it, but can he consistently hold that conditioning the entire show? He hasn't yet displayed that. But I think he has a good balance between what Hadi's got versus what Andrew's got. So he's got more height. He's got better symmetry. He's got nice round muscles. He can nail his conditioning. His thing is, can he maintain that conditioning throughout the prejudging, throughout the night show? If he can do that, he could surprise people. And then, of course, Nick Walker has made a career out of always being in shape. His weakness, as we know, is that his body doesn't flow as well as some of these other guys. And that's going to be very hard for him to overcome unless other guys are not at their best. And you know what?
Correct.
It's a very real possibility that half those guys that we mentioned won't be at their best, and Nick Walker will beat those guys. And that's why he does come in third at the Olympia, consistently, because he's always there at his best. And so that's what makes this Olympia. We can try to guess and handicap it all we want. Until we see what these guys look like the day of the prejudging, we're just guessing in the wind.